Just to rerun through the big items up front. Had the three BIPs that were recently undervote all pass, and then the two temp checks finished out as well, and have the results there. When it comes to upcoming and ongoing items, really we've got one big package of work that is currently in audit remediation, and then Beanstalk 3 is currently under audit with Codehawk. So we'll dig into those a little bit more here as we get further down in the slides. Okay, to hit the project funnel real quick. Really not a whole lot of movement in items. The probably the biggest item, because it's getting more and more discussion, I know within the contributor community, is the L2 migration, and I know so we're still in discussion phase in terms of an exact approach. That is becoming something that's becoming more and more likely. I'd imagine that we'll probably have more information about what the approach is going to be to that here over the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, no real major changes in terms of the project funnel. Okay, dropping down into the projects themselves. So as mentioned, with this first handful of projects, all these items are in remediation, and won't bother to go over these first few projects in a lot of extra detail, with the exception of if somebody has any questions, they can certainly drop something in the chat or unmute themselves and ask. So wstETH is in remediation, expecting completion of July 1st. Same thing with Multiflow version 1.1.0 and the miscellaneous improvements BIP. Miscellaneous improvements looking at deployment around the week of July 15th. Any questions about any of those items before we jump into Beanstalk 3? Now, as I see your question, yeah, did Multiflow show that it didn't need a BIP? That is correct. That is going to go through its deployment process with the wstETH deployment. A lot of times, for what it's worth, these groups of work, or what the slides will show, probably reflects audit groups, groups of code that are sent for audit, probably more than specific BIPs. So that's probably a good understanding to why Multiflow has its own page, but isn't necessarily set up with that BIP voting period. It'll be incorporated with wstETH. Tyler, looking at your question right now, Tyler asked, how do we think those enhancements that are going to be deployed in July will help with the growth of the protocol? It's not clear to me. So I guess what I'll do, maybe the best way to approach that, we've got a handful of those contributors that have been working on these improvements on this call. And Pizza Man, Dead Man, I don't know if either of you guys wanted to jump in and talk a little bit about some of these items and the new tools it'll give participants, but I'll open it up to you.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that's going to be deployed next is the wstETH migration with the Multiflow 1.1. And so by moving the base token from the Bean well to the Bean wstETH, rebases, or it kind of grows over time as ETH pays out its staking rewards. And so theoretically, as that happens, if the price of ETH stays flat, theoretically the price of wstETH should continue to increase, which is beneficial for Beanstalk. And then the second one, which is the miscellaneous improvements, I think maybe Deadman could say something about that. I don't see that Deadman is around now. Actually, maybe the time zone is not good.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what? Yeah, Deadman is on a European time zone. So the miscellaneous improvements are kind of that. So there are handfuls. So if you look at these items, so BDV increase for metadata, soil issuance update, I would say a lot of these they're like cleanup items. I guess I would kind of classify a lot of these miscellaneous improvement items as like I hate to say user experience, but basically they're more basic improvements to make the protocol both easier to use and a little bit more stable. I think the probably the let's see. Yeah, I think that's probably the best way to categorize them. What I can do, Tyler, is I can reach out to Deadman and just kind of have him run through, give a short explanation of each, and have him drop it in the chat, to just provide a little bit of that extra information.
Personally, I think the most interesting one here is the chop rate increase. So it'll increase to something like around 5%, given the current amount of fertilizer that's been sold. So at a 5% chop rate, it becomes a lot more attractive than it is now. So perhaps more people will chop, and increased chops means reduced total amount of debt for Beanstalk.
Appreciate it. Okay, any other questions before we jump into Beanstalk 3? Okay, so as we've discussed before, Beanstalk 3 is a pretty significant bundle of work. It's currently under audit. So, you've got components of Tractor, generalized convert, secure Beanstalk, generalized flood, and a handful of other smaller updates, a lot of which are kind of on the back end. I guess just watching a lot of the chats, there's been a lot of really good discussion between our team and the auditors. So, Pizza Man, not to kind of put you on the spot, but I'd love to hear your input on how that's been going. I mean, I feel like just watching the chat seems like the discussion's been good. The CodeHawks auditors seem to be really engaged, asking good questions. You have any thoughts about how the process is going?
Yeah, agreed. There's a lot of threads that have been started as well that are privately, where they're asking questions to the people who wrote the code, which is the Beanstalk contributors here. And so there's been a number of things that indicate that people are getting a better grasp of the protocol and really trying to find ways to possibly exploit it. And I think we've already gotten a couple useful reports out of that as well. So I don't think anything will be disclosed until the end of the audit time. But it's, from what I've seen so far, it looks like it's definitely been going pretty well.
Appreciate that. All right. Any other? Tyler B is typing. Tyler's still typing. So Tyler B asked the same question about Beanstalk 3. How do we think that it will make the protocol better? Pizza Man, you want to throw in any thoughts on there? I've got a couple myself.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, note that I'm just an individual contributor. Like
Yep.
Beanstalk is this big thing. It's not like
Yeah.
everyone has their own opinion about what will happen or what won't happen. The only way to find out is to find out. But I can kind of talk through some of these here on the list. So the top one being Tractor. This has been discussed for a long time. Theoretically, Tractor will allow you to create these blueprints, which allows code to execute on your behalf. So, for example, let's say you wanted to mow or convert if a certain set of conditions happen. So, let's say if bean drops below 90 cents and you want to convert when that happens, then you can set up a blueprint that will pay someone to execute that convert on your behalf so that you don't have to be around for that to happen. It also enables a number of other interesting things. So, like, theoretically, you could have deposit markets based on Tractor. So that all also requires a UI. I'm not sure what the timeline for the UI is. I do more work on the Solidity side, but sooner or later the UI should be up and running for that as well. The next thing is generalized convert. So that will, right now you can only convert between Bean and LP, and you can't convert between LPs. So when multiple wells become whitelisted, without generalized convert, there's not a way to convert between them. And there's also not a way to convert in a way that will give you a stock penalty, meaning, so now if you wanted to convert, for example, from Bean to the Bean ETH well, you couldn't do it. But with generalized convert, you can. There's a pre-calculated penalty that you'll get when doing so. So that allows more flexibility, but also adds in the stock penalty to try and align incentives. Then the next one is secure Beanstalk. So this one is really interesting. Basically, whenever any action happens within Beanstalk, it checks the state of Beanstalk before and after, and it basically adds up all of the debts that Beanstalk has and all of the underlying asset ownership. So, let's say you have some Bean ETH well token deposited, and so do a bunch of other people, and then someone tries to call a function on Beanstalk, and somehow they find a way to extract all of that. Theoretically, the secure Beanstalk code will see at the check that happens on the back end of the function call to say, like, hey, you're trying to extract too many of this underlying token that's held by Beanstalk that it owes its users, so it will revert when that happens. So super interesting to see, what kind of exploits that will prevent in the future. And the next one is the Solidity version 8, so for 0.8. This is more of a not anything like user facing that you experience, but it's a great way to get on the latest version of Solidity that has a number of great features and just keeps us up to date, basically with the latest ETH tech. Then Whitelisted v1.1. This is quite interesting actually because it allows it to be a lot easier to actually whitelist other wells. So for a long time, people have been wanting to whitelist, wrapped Bitcoin or other stable coins, and that hasn't happened for a number of reasons. But one of them was that the code to actually whitelist was kind of a bit complicated. So this will make it a lot easier for people to propose BIPs that will whitelist more assets. The next one is Gen Flood. So Flood, to be honest, is unlikely to happen unless Beanstalk experiences a rapid amount of growth. However, just the Flood code needed to be updated in order to support multiple wells anyway. So that was updated. It was a good time to sneak it in before the audit. And let's see here. I think that pretty much covers everything on the list. If there's anything that I missed, I'd be happy to cover it.
Pizza Man, I appreciate that. I mean, I feel enough comfort even as a non-technical contributor that I could walk through some of these, but you did a much better job than I would. Tyler, to give you my spin on the your specific question about how we think to make the protocol better. First, I will reiterate what Pizza Man said. How we don't know exactly how users will use these tools as they're deployed, but the two that really stick out to me, and this is again just my personal opinion, are the Whitelist version 1.1 and Tractor. I think those are particularly interesting as we continue to talk to prospective participants. I know that there's a lot of discussion right now happening in the Discord about bring new users in, and what are the best ways to do that, or you talk about marketing, or you talk about whatever you want in that regard. But these two particular items will give users a lot of new opportunities and new ways to leverage the protocol. Tractor being able to create some of these more automatic, more complex transactions and have someone else execute them on your behalf, potentially in groups. I mean, that's a really an interesting idea. Even just having some discussions with outside groups over the last few weeks, talked with another protocol about services they're offering their participants, and they were talking about automatic trade features and conversions, and it's nice to know that Tractor not only will give our users opportunities to do things like that, but really, I would say that we don't even really have our hands around the level of potentially complex transactions that could be set up through Tractor. So that's really exciting. And then the whitelist v1.1, Pizza Man said it. It'll make whitelisting new assets a lot easier. Getting to talk with some of the other contributors. I think we're still a little ways away from someone like me clicking a few buttons and being able to spin up a well, but whitelist version 1.1 is a step change in terms of being able to get those new wells spun up. So significantly easier, cutting down on the development and implementation time. So again, moving the protocol forward to really interesting pairing options and new wells. So Tyler follows up with what work is left after Beanstalk 3 to be able to add new wells through a UI and making the whitelisting super straightforward. So that's a it's a bit of a complex question, Tyler. I wish I had a really succinct answer for you. Again, just based on some of the conversations that I've been having, or been able to listen in on, or read through, I think we are still a little ways away from, like I said, someone. I use myself as an example because I'm non-technical. Being able to say, "Hey, I've got some random token that's in ERC20. I'd like to spin up a well. I think we're still ways away from me being able to do that just on my own. But again, the level of complexity with whitelist v1.1 is significantly reduced. So it's a closer opportunity, and I do know that there is some type of UI that will likely go along with the whitelisting. I don't think it'll be again. I don't think it'll be like here's your handful of button clicks, but it will be a way to get the right information into the hands of the contributors that can get those wells spun up relatively quickly. So again, whitelist is a step change. So Space Bean just jumped into and says the Basin UI is to deploy well, deploy well via Basin is currently being worked on and should be up soon. So that UI is under development. Any other questions on that? Sorry.
Yeah, my understanding is that the whitelisting aspect of it will always require a stock vote. So I'm not sure that there will be a UI for that. But the key inputs necessary are the actual well address and the USD oracle, which now you can also pass in with the new whitelisting 1.1 simply via a contract address. So for example, if there's an existing oracle on Chainlink that has, let's just take, for example, wrapped Bitcoin to the dollar amount, then that address can be passed into this new whitelisting function. So it's a lot more straightforward than it was before to be able to whitelist something. However, in order for that to actually happen, any BIP is code running basically. And so there needs to be code written that calls that function. However, any proposer could just say, hey, here's what I want to whitelist, and pass in, just in the description of the proposal, they could say what the address of the oracle is and what the address of the token is that they would like to have whitelisted.
Yep, and actually, Pizza Man, you bring up a really good point, and I'm watching Soil King drop a comment in as well. There's probably a distinction that we'll need to continue to remind folks. There's a difference between getting a new well implemented versus getting that well whitelisted for seigniorage. So that's probably an important distinction that we'll continue to make. So getting a well implemented is let's say it's and again, stop me if I'm misconstruing this, anybody. But as I see that, that's the more technical component where Pizza Man, like you just talked about, getting the address, determining the oracle. There's all those components, and then the whitelisting aspect is, again, you hit it right, Pizza Man. That's a voting component that would incorporate that new well to be part of the silo essentially and receive seigniorage. So there's a little bit of a distinction between those two aspects. One would lead to the other, but they're not the exact same thing. It's essentially a set of steps. All right, and looking at the chat, so Soil King, you bring up a good point. Soil King writes, for whitelisting, we also need to be careful which pool we whitelist since it will affect minting. I think that's a good observation. It's absolutely true. So Tyler B asks, is creating new wells the highest priority after Beanstalk 3? It's clear that we need more wells. Right now, we only have one. So Soil King later on adds clarification, which is important, that the wstETH wells technically is a second well. Tyler, to address your question specifically, it's hard to say, hey, this thing is the number one priority. I do know that there are a lot of folks that are very passionate about getting new wells implemented. It's probably not proper to give a specific list of priorities. I would say getting additional wells implemented and whitelisted as soon as possible is a very high priority. A lot of people are interested in getting that done. Let's see. So looks like Soil King asked a question back to Space Bean, and so Soil King asked to Space Bean's mention about the base new UI being updated with the whitelist capabilities. Soil King asked, and this will allow for any two tokens in a well, not just Bean. And yep, that's correct. Space Bean confirmed. Then Sweet Red basically just followed up with Tyler to ask if Tyler's asking about the ability to deploy new well on Basin or whitelisting new deployed wells, which again kind of goes back to what I was just talking about here a minute ago about the difference between deploying the new well and then whitelisting, and the deployment being more of a kind of the technical component, and the whitelist being more of a governance seniorage component. And we get a couple people typing in the chat. Yeah, so a lot of the discussion seems to be around, what are those two things? The difference between implementation of a new well and then whitelisting. So, and again, this whitelist version 1.1 is that progression in terms of the technical component. So it is going to make the implementation process easier for new wells. Whitelisting for seniorage, for what it's worth, that it's a little bit of a different question because, like I said, it has a lot to do with it's a vote. It's something that's voted on by the DAO. It has a lot to do with what the DAO thinks about the particular assets that are going into the well. So, to just kind of toss out some potential situations, I think there's probably a lot of interest. I shouldn't say think. I know there's a lot of interest from the community around doing wrapped Bitcoin as well. And that well implementation will have a technical component that, again, will hopefully be made quite a bit easier through whitelist version 1.1, just improving that implementation experience. The whitelisting, the actual addition of that asset, or that well, I should say, to give it seniorage should also be relatively straightforward. Obviously, Bitcoin's it's extremely well-known asset, well trusted. There probably won't be a lot of there may be some questions, but there's a lot of faith in the stability and general security of Bitcoin. So wrap Bitcoin is kind of an obvious choice. Where I think there'll be a lot more interesting discussion is as there are wells implemented that have a wider variety of assets in them. And I'm going to guess that there will be certain assets that the community will look at for whitelisting once the well is implemented and say, yeah, it's a good choice. It's a well-known token. It's something that we feel comfortable with. And there's probably going to be instances where the DAO will see an asset in a well, and it'll be proposed for whitelisting, and the DAO may say, no, we're not comfortable with it. So it's a two-step process, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out, especially as that breadth of assets in different wells gets wider, as those opportunities to whitelist become more. So interesting to see how it plays out.
So if I could just jump in for a moment and answer
Please.
Tyler B's question just sort of directly. If you look at a lot of these updates that Pizza Man just rolled through, like whitelist v1.1, generalized flood, generalized convert, all of those things have to do with sort of generalizing Beanstalk to be able to integrate with multiple whitelisted wells. So I think it is fair to say that it feels like a priority for Beanstalk, and the development seems to be pointed in the direction of supporting multiple whitelisted wells. And I think in addition, Space Bean just sort of mentioned this in the chat, but the ability to deploy any well with 2 ERC20s through the Basin UI is being worked on currently and about to be deployed. So yeah, just wanted to answer your question more directly.
Appreciate that, Sweet Red. So Tyler asked an additional question. I think is an interesting one, a good one. Is there usage for a well that's implemented in Basin but not whitelisted? So I think the short answer is probably it depends. So obviously there is an advantage for a well to be whitelisted if possible. If the DAO is comfortable with it, and the well makes sense to whitelist, it should be, and it would be. There would be an advantage to to those who participate for a variety of reasons based on how the well is set up. I think that there is an opportunity, at least for wells that aren't whitelisted, if for no other reason than simply to facilitate usage of Basin. And really the advantages to Basin are offered primarily when a well becomes, or when a particular, when a well becomes whitelisted, because then the seniorage opportunities there, and there's just generally there's more incentive to participate in that well. But the ability to implement arbitrary wells in and of itself, there's opportunity that comes along with that. I think this is something that we'll probably see users taking advantage of in ways that we probably can't fully anticipate right now. But yeah, there definitely is opportunity even for non-whitelisted wells and pairs.
If I could just add on to that, sort of one of the reasons why I guess the inspiration for Basin came from the understanding of multi-block MEV becoming possible after the merge. And in theory, any protocol that wants to incentivize liquidity into a specific pool would be able to plug and play Multiflow, which is the Oracle system built on top of Basin. And so I don't know if it's super clear exactly which sort of protocols would be the right fit to use something like that. But presumably, if there was some other protocol on the Ethereum network that wanted to use a plug and play Oracle system, I think Basin is superior to the other dexes that are on the EVM. So that's just my 2 cents, but I think that is a use for Basin for other protocols that might want to deploy wells and not necessarily have them be whitelisted in Beanstalk.
Appreciate that. Okay, any other questions or comments on Beanstalk 3? Okay, so I've got a slide in here that says Subgraph and other updates. Soil King, I want to give you a second in case there's any updates you want to give. And then Sweet Red, appreciate you joining us. Definitely would love to hear from you about any other UI updates that we haven't talked through already.
All right. So yeah, absolutely. Kind of my main focus over the last couple weeks, been working on kind of a few different things, but kind of the main focus has been getting us onto DeFi Llama. And it's kind of a process where like most of the way there. Basin actually just got listed, I think, yesterday. So Basin's listed and you can see like all the historical volume on there. But really the one that at least I'm most excited about, and I think obviously Beanstalk, and getting the APYs on there is kind of the last challenge that I'm working through. But once we get that set up, I think that'll be pretty exciting. If in the future, like how we saw over the last few weeks when when ETH was pumping and the APY numbers were getting up there, if that situation plays out again, it will be nice to have us listed on that side as well. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm focusing on at the moment. But I guess with regards to that, another thing that I want to highlight with the APYs is as a result of I guess the development work that needs to be done to get onto DeFi Llama, we'll also have a pretty clean and convenient mechanism we can use to actually display to users like a personal APY or based on like any kind of arbitrary simulation that someone might want to simulate. Like for example, the current APYs are fixed to just 24 hours, 7 days, and 30 days, and they're using like whatever is the current like average bean mints over that period. But we'll be able to have we can envision a system with these new changes where it would be possible for a user to specify anything that they wanted to for the different parameters that'll go into the calculation. And of course, like with seed gauge and how the seeds like shift between the seasons and all that. So yeah, I think that'll be pretty cool. I can't really speak too much to in terms of when that would actually be available like on a UI for people to kind of play around with, but at least like the capability of calculating it and then having it on DeFi Llama, that'll be coming hopefully in the next week, but we will definitely see.
That's awesome. Appreciate that, Soil. So that is very exciting. I know that there's been a lot of chatter around the Discord about, again, how can we get the word out about Beanstalk, and how can we get the APYs in front of more people. I mean, DeFi Llama is going to be a huge step forward in that regard. So appreciate the work there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you, Red, you want to walk us through any additional UI information?
Yeah, sure. On my end, sort of have spent the last week or so working on some UX enhancements to the silo page. A lot of it sort of hopefully contextualizing the seed gauge system. Right now you can see the seed rewards, but it's sort of not clear what the bean to max LP ratio is, what the min and the max are. And hopefully that will sort of assist users to be able to make efficient actions when there are more than one whitelisted well, as we get to see the optimal distribution of LP sort of in play. And so shout out Nasjack for your questions in Discord. Those were helpful in helping me think through that UX. And so look out for that. And then I think in addition, starting to think through what the UX should feel like for generalized convert, generalized flood, lambda to lambda converts, and anti-lambda to lambda converts. So all of the Beanstalk 3 stuff, that's sort of, I'm hoping to sort of think through all of that together because it's all connected, and that's sort of the next thing that I'll be spending my time on. So yeah, those are the updates from my end.
Appreciate it. All right, Tyler is typing. Give you a moment to. All right, Stoking, I believe this question's for you. Tyler B writes: are we planning to do more integrations with DeFi protocols like lending or dexes? I'll let you jump in, Stoking, and then I've got a thought too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we have anything planned at the moment. I mean, it's definitely something that can be looked into. I don't know if you have anything specific that you have in mind. I mean, I guess when I see the question, the one thing that I think of is, getting base in like on, a DEX aggregator or something of that sort, so that, if you go into MetaMask or whatever, and you just click, whatever swap button they have, that it would be able to route things through there. That seems like something that would definitely be good to do at some point. But yeah, curious if you have any other specific ideas or if Rex does either.
Yeah, and while Tyler's typing, I'll mention, I think I had alluded earlier that, we've been having conversations with other outside groups, and something that I have been really interested during those conversations to see is to, kind of do my best to make kind of objective comparisons between where I see Beanstalk and Basin heading, and some of the features and options and opportunities that other groups offer. And I know that there's always a desire to get things done more quickly and get new features and new components shipped quickly. But what has struck me over these last few weeks with some of the conversations I've been in is how much more capable the system that is being developed around Beanstalk and Base, and how much more capable that will be. Again, something that really struck me was talking with a particular outside group and thinking about Tractor and the level of complexity that that will be able to be executed using the Tractor system. It's just it's going to be pretty exciting to see how people use that system once it's implemented. And if a protocol that we talk to is excited about automatic trading, to based on a particular price threshold, market limit pricing and trading, Tractor is going to offer significantly more dynamic opportunities for use. So, I'm really excited about what we've got coming together here. And so when I think about like other lending or dexes, I think what we're going to offer through Beanstalk and Basin is significantly better anyways. But again, those are just personal thoughts. Okay, that's all I have for the slides. I don't see anyone typing currently in the voice channel chat. Pulling up the Barnyard chat, do not see any additional comments there. I'll give just another moment. So Tyler is typing. I'll give you a moment there. Oh, of course. Tyler says thank you for answering all the questions. And I will definitely thank the contributors that helped, because again, appreciate their input, giving a lot of additional color that that I don't have. So definitely appreciate you guys helping out. So all right, I think that's all we've got for today. Appreciate everybody joining us. We will get this recording up as soon as possible. And actually, I think it was Wiz suggested getting doing a thread on Twitter to talk through what's discussed during DAO meetings and some other things that I was looking at those comments, Wiz, and I appreciate them. And I think we're going to figure out a way to start doing that. So we'll start getting that information out. We'll have a thread out on Twitter as a recap for this meeting, and we'll get the recording out here pretty soon. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate your time.